Hi guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be recapping everything that went down in Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros in preparation for Onyx Storm. Alright guys, welcome to the Iron Flame recap. Now if you need a recap on Fourth Wing, I will leave mine in the cards and in the description. And similar to all my other recap videos, this should not be used in lieu of actually reading Iron Flame, more of a refresher before diving into Onyx Storm, which is releasing later this month. And I will say, because of the length of Iron Flame, I will be breaking this recap up into different chapters, and then at the end of this video, I will share all of my theories for what I believe is going to happen in Onyx Storm. Now, if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram, Goodreads, and Patreon, all linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's recap Iron Flame. Alright guys, so Iron Flame picks up where Fourth Wing left off, but there were some very big revelations at the end of Fourth Wing that I want to discuss. So one of them being that Venin and Wyvern exist. If you remember in Fourth Wing, we learned that there was once 3 different brothers, or at least that's kind of what folklore says. And one of them drew magic from dragons, another one drew magic from griffins, and the last one, who was very jealous, drew magic directly from the source, and somehow this magic became corrupted, and that's how we get the Venin, or once again, that's what the fairy tales kind of say. On top of this, we also learn that the Navarian government has been keeping the fact that the Venin and Wyvern exist a secret from the civilians. So another thing that we learn at the end of Fourth Wing is that Griffin riders are actually not evil. They are just trying to protect themselves from the Venin that have been attacking their communities because they don't have wards like the Navarian citizens. So we also learn that Xaden and his group have been smuggling out a certain compound to the Griffin Riders that they believe will help power the wards being the only thing that can stop Venin. However, they're still not exactly sure how to get these wards operational. They just know they need this certain compound in order to do it. So, another huge revelation is we learn that Brennan is in fact alive, Brennan being Violet's older brother. We believed that he was dead all throughout Fourth Wing, only to discover he is alive, and actually Xaden has known about it the entire time, which means that Violet is starting to not trust Xaden once again. So those are pretty much the main things that you need to know going into Iron Flame. Alright guys, so jumping into the plot, Violet Sorngale is being mended at Riorson House, which is a rebel fortress, after being severely injured at the end of Fourth Wing. Now, when Violet ends up waking up, she discovers that her brother Brennan is alive. Now, Violet feels somewhat betrayed by both Xaden and Brennan. Xaden because she learns that Xaden has known that Brennan was alive this entire time, and Brennan for not contacting her over the last 6 years. So Violet is grappling with that, but also with the fact that she lost Liam, one of her very good friends, also one of the marked ones, part of Xaden's group. So on top of all of this, once Violet is strong enough to be able to walk around, she learns that Andarna has grown significantly and also has changed color. Andarna is now a black dragon. So Terran informs Violet that Andarna will have to enter the dreamless sleep, which is something that adolescent dragons have to go through in order to become, I guess, fully adult. Also, adolescent dragons are very, very sassy, and Andarna is no different, which added a lot of really good humor, I believe, to the beginning of Iron Flame. So once again, Violet and Xaden are kind of having a little bit of trust issues, and Violet asks that Xaden no longer lie to her, which Xaden says, "I promise I won't lie to you about anything that has to deal with me, but I might still lie to you about other important things because Dane, your best friend, is able to read your mind and you still are not proficient with shielding." So if you remember at the end of Fourth Wing, we find out that Dane was able to read Violet's mind in order to find out that she was actually working with Xaden and Xaden's friends. Although she really wasn't. She really didn't exactly know what they were up to. But either way, we are very suspicious of Dane. So then Xaden has the bright idea that they must return to Basgiath College. And this entire time I thought there was going to have to be a major heist or something crazy. I didn't understand how they were just going to waltz back into Basgiath, but that is exactly what they ended up doing. All right, so Xaden, Violet, and the other cadets return to Basgiath on graduation day. Now, before they are seen, Violet ends up sneaking into Liam's room. Remember, Liam and his dragon have recently passed away, and collects all the letters he wrote to his younger sister Sloane, who will be starting at Basgiath later this year. She then gives the letters to her friend Rhiannon, and Rhiannon was very worried about Violet, so they have a bit of a conversation, and later in this chapter, Rhiannon will be promoted to the wing leader, which is like a very big promotion. So anyway, Violet ends up reuniting with Xaden and the other cadets, and as they are reading the death roll, which is like a big assembly, Xaden, Violet, and the cadets all make their presence known. So then Dane Atos' father, I forget his first name and his rank, immediately says that they are deserters and should be put to death. Also, Violet Sorrengail's mother is also there, and she is trying to kind of figure out what's going on. She actually does show some maternal instincts during the scene, which was very nice to see. But anyway, Xaden ends up confronting Dane's father and says, hey, we did not desert. Actually, because you emptied the outpost because of these war games, there was a group of Griffin riders that attacked us. He does not mention the Venin, and this is strategic. So then Violet's mother becomes very upset that her daughter was severely injured, and slowly, because of all of these things, Atos is banished out of Basgiath, which is great for us, but then someone ends up replacing him, which is just as bad, if not worse. So anyway, all things seem to go pretty well. They were able to re-enter Basgiath. Like I said before, this did seem very convenient. I did not think it was going to go this easily, but hey, worked out. So then we find out that Xaden is being promoted to lieutenant, and he is going to be shipped off to an outpost where he will have to like prepare for battle. But this poses an issue because Sgaeyl, his dragon, and Terran, Violet's dragon, are bonded mates and cannot be separated. So eventually it is revealed that every week Xaden and Violet will be able to see each other. Xaden will be given leave to visit, really, so Sgaeyl can visit Terran. But unfortunately, that does not happen as regularly as we would hope. All right, so Violet is now ready to begin her second year at Basgiath. Xaden and Sgaeyl are now at the outpost, so Violet is really navigating what she should and should not tell her friends regarding what happened during those war games where Liam was killed. She feels very badly about not sharing her secrets, but also doesn't want to put her friends in danger, and also doesn't know if she will be able to trust them. So Violet is really kind of going through it internally. So on top of that, we are introduced to some new characters on conscription day. So first we are introduced to Sloane Mari, who is Liam's younger sister. Now she has started at Basgiath, and what we did not realize is that she absolutely loathes Violet with a burning passion and believes that Violet is the reason for Liam, her older brother's death. So Violet is determined to make sure that Sloane survives her first year, which is more and more difficult because, once again, Sloane is very stubborn and absolutely hates Violet. We are also introduced to Cam, who is the king's third son, who Violet recognizes immediately, although he is going by a fake name of Alric, because he does not believe his father would want him to enter Basgiath's War College. So Violet does end up keeping this secret, yet another secret she is keeping from her friends. We are then introduced to Martin Varish, who we soon discover is very good friends with Colonel Atos and actually has been sent to Basgiath essentially to take down Violet and the entire group of Marked Ones and everyone that was involved in the war games. So he actually has a one-eyed dragon named Solus, who is just as evil and menacing, and this really comes to a head when there is a group almost assembly of all of the first years who have successfully crossed the parapet, and then all of the other wings. And while they are discussing how dangerous it is to be part of Basgiath War College, someone decides to run and desert, and Solus decides to fry everyone in the surrounding area. So he ends up shooting fire towards the deserter, but also towards a lot of Violet's entire wing. So a few people do end up dying. Violet is able to realize what is happening and protect Sloane, but Terran realizes what is going on, and he is not happy. And in one of my absolute favorite scenes of this book, he shows up and puts Solus in his place. It is so good. Highly recommend the audiobook. I absolutely love that scene. Terran is such a badass. He's perfection. So anyway, he essentially confronts Solus and shows him who the real dragon is, and Violet is essentially set up to have this man absolutely loathe her. All right, so the next few chapters really just deal with Violet attending her second year of school. Now, we are made aware right away that there seem to be assassins sent out to take out Violet specifically, because at one point there is a practice fight type thing going on, and someone claims to be Violet, to which a new first year ends up snapping this girl's neck, and we discover that there are actually assassins out there to try to kill Violet. But also, not just Violet, it also seems like they are there to kill all of the Mark Ones that were involved in the war games, presumably to keep the secret of the Venin completely a secret. So that is all going on. We also discover there is a new elixir that has been created that when given to a dragon rider, it will prevent the dragon rider from being able to contact the dragon mentally, and also it kind of stops their powers from working. So that is absolutely terrifying, and it's something we discover is new this year. On top of all of that, Violet ends up researching the history of Navarre, and she does this by getting her friend who is a scribe named Jesinia involved. Because Jesinia is a kind of high up scribe, she is able to have access to some old tomes that Violet no longer has access to. So although it is very dangerous, Jesinia does agree to help Violet, and together they start researching the history and also how to get the wards operational, because remember, Xaden and his group are still trying to help the Griffin Riders collect enough of this compound and discover how to create wards in order to protect themselves from the Venin. So eventually, Violet begins to research how the first six, or the founders of Navarre, were able to create the wards using wardstones. Now, she realizes they're also lucky because where the rebel base is, there is a wardstone, but they can't get it operational. So she decides she is going to need to research the journals from the original six, I believe, in the hopes that one of them wrote down how to get these wardstones operational. So once again, she asks for Jesinia's help, and Jesinia begins looking for a secret vault where these journals might be kept. Now, on top of all of this, Violet then confronts Dane. Remember, Dane was her best friend until he used his signet on her and told his father that Violet was working with Xaden. Now, I said he read her mind. That's not exactly true. He is able to touch, and he has to touch the person, and then he's able to go into their memories. So that's kind of his signet ability, which is pretty much kept secret besides Violet and a few others knowing. So Violet and Dane kind of have this confrontation, doesn't go very well, they're still not friends, and then we discover that Jack Barlow is still alive. And I literally laughed out loud when we got to this part, only because I made a joke in my original Fourth Ring recap that no body, he could come back, and of course, he did end up coming back. So we also learn that there has been this room that has been guarded, and I think it's in the healer wing, and that Nolan, who was very close with Violet, he's someone that used to heal her very frequently, because remember, Violet does have a chronic condition where her ligaments can break very easily. So anyway, Nolan has seemed very, very tired, and we find out Nolan was so tired because he has been healing Jack this entire time. Now, Jack, for some reason, is acting very, very nice towards Violet and all of the other, people in her wing, which is very out of character, and that is where we leave off in those chapters. All right, so like I noted previously, Violet has been really conflicted about not telling her friends everything that went down at the War Games with the Venin and how Liam actually died. So after she is being interrogated by Varish, Rhiannon sees this and is able to save Violet by using her signet to transport a dagger that Violet is definitely not supposed to have because it is made of that compound that can kill Venin to her room. And then Violet finally decides that she is going to tell her friends everything. So after they confirm Violet's story with their dragons, mind to mind, they completely believe her and they say they will support her, which is absolutely amazing and a huge weight off Violet's chest. So then we find out that Jesinia has found the vault that houses two of the journals that hopefully have the directions to make the Wardstones operational. The only issue is that vault can only be opened by someone from the royal line. Luckily, like I said earlier, Violet knows that Auric is actually Cam, one of the king's brothers, and he will be able to open that vault. So together they kind of create this entire plot where they, along with Xaden, who is now on leave to visit Violet, are going to break into this vault, get the journals, and then leave. So actually everything goes rather smoothly. They are able to find these journals with the help of Cam/Eric, whatever you want to call him, and then Xaden takes one of the journals and flies away, only for Violet, as she is returning back to her dorm, to be stopped by Nolan. Remember, Nolan is the person that has been healing Violet this entire time, and she has a very close relationship with. And Nolan, after giving Violet a drink, Violet starts to feel a little funny and realizes that Nolan has drugged her with that drug that stops her from being able to communicate with her dragons or use her magical abilities. And then she is brought to a dungeon and tortured by Varish. Alright, so the next few scenes are very upsetting. Violet is repeatedly tortured and then healed and tortured again by Varish. Now, while this torture is going on, Violet apparently hallucinates Liam, or the ghost of Liam, who is telling Violet everything is going to be okay, he is here. Now, I think this has something to do with Violet's second signet, but I will get into that during my theories and predictions. So eventually, after Violet refuses to break, Varish admits that he really isn't doing this for Violet, he really just wants to use Violet in order to get Xaden to desert, and then he'll be able to torture and get information out of Xaden. So eventually, Dane Atos is called in by Varish to help with this interrogation, and he originally believes that Violet has turned against Basgiath and their whole war effort, and he is willing to try to get information out of her. But Violet decides that she is not going to let Dane just kind of mosey through her head. Instead, she is going to force him to see the memories of what happened during the war games, including the Venin and then Liam dying and his last words. So Dane ends up rearing back, and you think he is actually going to kill Violet for her deserting, but instead he ends up cutting her ropes. So that was very nice. We find out that Dane is not as bad as we originally thought. Then Xaden makes his appearance because, of course, he wasn't going to let Violet get tortured on his watch, so he did in fact desert and has come to save her. So we also find out that there have been wyvern being dropped all over the Navarre area, so people are starting to question if wyvern and Venin are actually real. We find out that was kind of done to create a diversion in order for Xaden to be able to save Violet. So anyway, Dane, Violet, and a bunch of other riders then decide they are going to fight on the right side. They're going to leave Basgiath, go to the rebel group, the fortress at Riorson House where Brennan is, and get together and try to create a revolution. All right, and that concludes part one. I do want to go over some key information that I forgot to include in the first half, just because there is so much information given to us in this book. I was also recently made aware that this was originally supposed to be books 2 and 3, and then it ended up being condensed into one book. I firmly believe this is where one of the books would have ended, because I feel like we've already been given an arc, and I just feel like as of now, we're going to go into a completely separate book. But that being said, I'm still very excited to recap the rest of it. Now, some things I forgot to mention is one, Varish is killed at the end of that chapter. Xaden originally goes to kill him and then says, actually, Violet, this is your kill, to which Violet goes to stab him. She honestly does not have enough power to do so because she is so weak after the torture. So Xaden helps shove a knife into his heart and then he dies. So also, Dane and Violet kind of rekindle their friendship. Dane apologizes for not believing Violet, but also says he really wished she would have told him. Also, we're kind of given a hint at another plot point that we find out towards the end of this book, because Xaden does forgive Dane very, very quickly, which you would not think would be the case. And then we also discover that Violet's mother was actually working with Xaden the entire first year, or Violet's first year at Basgiath. So because Violet's mother was responsible for allowing the Marked Ones to enter Basgiath, she said she would call in a favor to Xaden whenever she thought of one. And when Violet ended up entering Basgiath, she then told Xaden, hey, you have to make sure my daughter survives the first year. So Violet then begins to question if she would have fallen in love with Xaden had her mother not put this stipulation on him. So they're once again kind of questioning each other. Also, I forgot to mention, there were a few professors that also decided to join the war effort and go to Riorson House. I think I just said students originally, but there was a mix of professors and students. All right, so Brennan is obviously very upset that Violet has essentially kickstarted this war effort by bringing all of the dragon riders from Biscayeth, or not all of them, but most of them, from Biscayeth to the rebel outpost. Now, some of the dragon riders that have come are actually first years that their signets haven't even manifested yet. So they're still trying to kind of have school go on. So while all of this is going on, Xaden is trying to get a luminary from Takaris, who is a Viscount that lives in Pormiel, I believe. I could be completely off base. I know it starts with a P, but that is where all of the Griffins and the Griffin Riders live. So he believes if he can get this luminary, it could help protect everyone from the Venin. So Violet and Xaden go there, and after a very big mess where Violet essentially has to fight a Venin that the Viscount sprung upon her, and then Xaden almost kills the Viscount. Eventually, an agreement is made that if Xaden and Violet will take 100 Griffin flyers and train them like they do at Biscayeth, then he will give them the luminary. So that is really where that chapter leaves off. And this is when we're introduced to some of the different Griffin flyers. Now, I will get more in depth into all the different characters at the end of my recap. Just know one of the most notable is Cat. Now, Cat is actually the niece of the Viscount, so she is kind of noble, and she was engaged to Xaden for a small amount of time, but that was one of his exes. So Violet and Cat do not get along upon meeting. Violet is very jealous that Xaden has a history with Cat, and Cat is very jealous that Xaden has chosen Violet. So Cat also has the ability to manipulate and enhance emotions, which she uses to her advantage and to make Violet lose her mind multiple times throughout this book. So that is their relationship. Eventually, Violet does save Cat and a friendship grows between them, but for the most of the first half of their meeting, they do not get along. And now the Griffin Flyers and the Dragon Riders are both training at the Rebel Outpost in the hopes that they'll be able to take down their common enemy, the Venin. Now, while all this is going on, Violet is still researching through the journals, trying to figure out how to get the wards operational. She believed prior to this that if 6 Dragon Riders came together and put blood on the wardstone, it would make the wardstone operational. That did not end up working. She then discovered she was wrong. It actually meant 6 different dragons. So Violet, Xaden, and a few other Dragon Riders go to the wardstone. They all breathe fire with their dragons onto the wardstone, and that seems to work because at that exact time, a group of Venin and their wyverns attack the rebel outpost, and the wards seem to be operational. But because of something, I think someone's able to use magic when they shouldn't, they realize that the wards aren't as powerful as they should be. They're not as powerful as the wards at Biscayeth. So they still have to figure out what exactly is going on. Now, on top of all of this, we also discover that if a dragon rider ends up bonding with a dragon that his ancestor had already bonded with, that it will either produce a second signet or the dragon rider will go insane. Well, we know that Xaden's dragon Sigale was once bonded to one of his ancestors. I'm pretty sure it's his grandfather, but I'm not positive. So since Xaden is not insane, that means he has a second signet. So Violet ends up confronting Xaden, and Xaden admits that, I believe it's called an intrinsic, but he is able to read people's intuitions and their motivations. So it is an absolutely terrifying signet, and once again, Violet feels completely betrayed because Xaden did not tell her. But we also find out that Xaden did not tell anybody, and the only other person that knew was Sigale, his dragon, and Sigale didn't even tell Taryn, her mate. So this was a huge secret, and eventually Violet does forgive Xaden, and that is really where that chapter leaves off. Right, so General Melgrim, who's the head of Biscayeth War College, requests a meeting with Xaden, Violet, and a few of the other dragon riders. So they end up journeying back to Biscayeth, and when they get there, they find out that General Sorengale is still present. So this meeting is a bit of back and forth, with really our main characters questioning why all of the higher-ups at Biscayeth are willing to let all of these innocent people die, and nothing really comes of this meeting other than Violet Sorengale's mother, General Sorengale, discovering that Brennan, her son, is actually alive, and also General Sorengale telling Violet that she has the wrong information and that her wards are going to fail, which was already hinted out previously. So she gives Violet the other journal. I believe the owner of the journal was Lyra, but it was one of the main people. Gives her the original journal and says, hey, the answer to your wards is in this. So through this journal, Violet is able to discover that there's actually 7 different types of dragons, and we discover Andarna is actually that 7th type. She is not a black dragon. She's actually able to change her color, and the only reason that she presented as a black dragon after maturing is because she looks up to Terran so much. Terran is such a girl dad. I also have a theory that Terran might not make it much longer, and I really hope I'm wrong, because that will absolutely break me. But yeah, so that has been what's going on, essentially. Now, something I forgot to mention is Violet has been plagued with these dreams of a very specific wyvern. It's one of the higher ups. I'll talk about that when I get into the character list. And he has been going into Violet's dreams and telling her that she will end up perishing along with Xaden, and it's all going to be because of love. Now, my friend brought up a theory that she believes that these dreams are actually Xaden's dreams that Violet is able to see because of their mind-to-mind connection, and I think that theory actually has a lot of merit. And that brings us to the final battle. So Violet soon realizes that the Venin are actually targeting Basgiath War College and not the rebel outpost. So she, along with a bunch of other dragon riders, rush over to Basgiath in order to try to protect the only operating wardstone and wards. So when they get there, they soon realize that most of Basgiath has been deserted for another upcoming battle, and one of the only people there to protect Basgiath is General Sorengale, who says that the wards are fully operational, no one could possibly get in. So after some convincing from Xaden and Violet, General Sorengale ends up taking them to the Wardstone, where they see Jack Barlow. Remember Jack? Brought him up earlier? He's still evil. So he, turns out, is actually a Venin. He's been a Venin this entire time. He ends up sacrificing his own dragon in order to destroy the Wardstone. So now all of the Venin are able to just ambush Basgiath. So there is a giant war taking place, and Violet is trying to figure out a way to fix this wardstone. So Brennan ends up showing up, and he is able to kind of put the wardstone back together, but Violet realizes she needs to power it up. So she is trying her best to give all of her power to get this wardstone operational, and is starting to burn out. And then General Sorengale, her mother, sees that her daughter is about to perish and decides to take this upon herself. So she gets Sloane, remember, Liam's younger sister, her siphon ended up manifesting, and now she is a siphon. So she's able to siphon both General Sorengale and General Sorengale's dragon's powers into this wardstone, effectively killing them, but also making the wardstone operational and killing all the Venin. So that is the end of the battle. Unfortunately, while this battle was going on, somehow Xaden ended up being corrupted by the Venin, and he now has the red around his pupils, and that is where this story leaves off. Alright guys, so before I get into my theories and predictions for Onyx Storm, I do want to go over the character list of the different characters that were introduced, as well as the Venin hierarchy, because Rebecca Yarros did say that was going to be important for Onyx Storm. Also, there were a few little bits of information I might have left out in the recap, so if I notice anything, I will go over it as I'm going through the characters. Also, I am going to be reading this off my computer instead of by memory, like my typical recaps, honestly, so I don't miss anything, and I don't think you guys mind. So first up, we have Major Varish, who is one of the main antagonists that's introduced. He has a one-eyed orange dragon named Solus. Now, Solus is actually one-eyed because he got into a fight with Terran prior to the events of this book. And something major that I left out, Andarna does end up killing Solus in this book and is known as a slayer, which apparently is very taboo for dragons. So then we have Sloane Mari, who is Liam's sister. She harbors a lot of resentment towards Violet Sorengale because she believes that Liam was killed because of Violet. Eventually, Violet does give the letters from Liam to Sloane, which does kind of help mend the relationship a little bit. Also, Xaden helps and a few other people to prove that Violet and Liam were actually really good friends. Then we have Eric, also known as Cam. He is the third son of King Tari, and he enrolls under a fake name to Basgiath, and he is the one that is able to get Violet into that vault that only someone of royal blood would be able to access. So then we have Jacinia, who actually is introduced in Fourth Wing, so I'm not going to go over that. Jack Barlow does make an appearance. Again, we presumed he was dead at the end of Fourth Wing, but because of Nolan healing him, he does come back, and then we realize that he is actually a Venin. And something else I forgot to mention, at the end of Iron Flame, Xaden actually confronts Jack Barlow and says, "What is the cure?" To which Jack says, "There is no cure." So also kind of scary. Then we have Viscount Takaris. He is a political figure, and he wants to use Violet. He actually likes to collect very powerful things, so he was very interested in Violet's abilities. That is who they end up getting the Luminary from, and it is Kat's uncle. So then we have, let's see, Professor Kaori. Actually, I believe we were also introduced prior in Fourth Wing. These are just my notes that I take while I'm reading. They're not even like, everything is mixed together. We also have Garrick, who assists in the rescue mission. He's shown the border support network around to Violet. And Imogen, who also we do meet in Fourth Wing, but now she kind of plays a different role in Iron Flame. She is a lot less suspicious of Violet, and they have a pretty close friendship. So then getting into the different Venin ranks, we have Initiate, which is the lowest level, characterized by occasionally red-rimmed eyes from draining others. Then we have Asim, A-S-I-M. Their eyes vary in redness, and their veins distend when agitated, though not as pronounced as Sages. Then we have Sages, which are responsible for Initiates with permanently red eyes and distinctly distended veins. And then we have Maven, which are the highest known rank, equivalent to generals. Maven have never been captured or studied, adding an element of mystery and threat. Moving into my theories and predictions for Onyx Storm. First off, I'd like to say a lot of people have these same theories and predictions, so none of these are like super original. Also, I'd like to say a huge thank you to my friend Carrie. I've known Carrie since college. We both worked at a tanning salon, and we were both going back and forth DMing about our theories and predictions. So some of these are definitely inspired by her. So thank you, Carrie. Now, the first one is Violet's second signet. So we know Violet is paired with two dragons, so I do believe she is going to possess a second signet, and personally, I believe it is necromancy. We know that signets manifest because of what the person really needs. Violet needs information, and she needs information from a lot of people that have already passed away. And I think that Liam's scene was so on the nose that she is a necromancer and able to communicate with the dead. So I really think because of that whole Liam interaction while she's being tortured, that her second signet is necromancy. Now, I believe my friend Carrie saw this on a TikTok, or it was her own idea, that the reason Violet was able to see Liam is because of the letters that were not burned. Because typically, if a dragon rider is killed, all of their belongings are destroyed. But because Violet saved the letters, there is a small possibility that Liam, that's how she was able to still contact Liam, is through him having belongings that still exist, if that makes sense. So that would actually make it a lot more challenging for Violet to contact some of the past cadets, but also really interesting. So that is my first theory. My other theory I've already brought up, but it's that when Violet is having these dreams of the Venin warning Violet and trying to kind of terrify her and tell her that she will fail and Xaden and her will die because of love, is actually Xaden's dreams that Violet is able to view. The reason I feel this way is because it seems like a lot of work for this Venin to terrify Violet when his end goal was really Xaden. We find out at the end of Iron Flame that the high up Venin was actually waiting to try to capture Xaden and attack Xaden, not Violet. I also am wondering, why is that the case? Which brings me to my kind of final theory, dark wielders. So it is brought up throughout this book that there are dark wielders, and sometimes they'll say dark wielders, other times they'll say Venin and use them interchangeably. What if dark wielders are actually not the Venin? What if they are Xaden and Xaden's like shadow powers? So what if by the Venin getting control of Xaden, that creates like the ultimate bad guy, like evil? So I'm very curious to see what ends up happening. Let me know down in the comments, what are your theories for Onyx Storm? What do you think is gonna happen? Also, not really a theory, just an inkling. I think Terran is not gonna make it. So I just feel like we all love Terran so much. I know I'm not saying his name correctly. That I just don't see him making it. Out of all of the dragons, if one was to perish, I would be the most upset if it was Terran. But also, I feel like Terran is the only one that can pass away, because technically Violet does have 2 dragons, so maybe Terran passing away and Andarna will still keep everyone alive. I don't know if that exactly makes sense, but it's a possibility. Once again, let me know, what are your thoughts? What do you think is gonna happen? I am so ready for this book to release. Alright guys, that is it for my Iron Flame recap. Sorry it was a little bit chaotic, but thank you guys so much for watching. And I am human, so if I did end up making a mistake, please nicely tell me in the comments and I will address it in the description or I will pin a comment. And I would like to say a special thank you to my Paladin protectors, Amanda, Leslie, Lotta, Kat, and Jess. Thank you so much for supporting my channel. And I said this already, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday, and if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye.